Hi, my name is Shobit Narang, and today on Balcony Ticket, I have with me one of the finest actors, Neil Bhoopalam. Neil, I wanted to start by asking you, what would an ideal day in life of Neil Bhoopalam look like from morning to evening?
Shobit, that's a great way to start. My days are not completely consistent. They start kind of sluggish. I'm extremely grumpy in the morning, and I start off with some fruit. Twice a week, I go for a cycle in the morning. Hopefully, by the time the sun is just about up. That's a new sort of rhythm I'm trying to catch. Then I'll have like a tea. I'll have a breakfast. I'll do a little bit of exercise by about 10:30, 11 o'clock, either in the park, because I don't have the willpower to exercise myself, so I have to have a trainer to tell me and remind me that I have to pay for services to to stay fit. So I sort of outsource that department. Then lunchtime, and then I always try and have a nap in the afternoon. Post that evening, then Fateh, my kid, and I, we'll have some evening program. We'll go to a park or stare at the sea if we're in Bombay. And yeah, dinner. Hopefully, watch my wife Nandini and I. We'd watch a movie or a show in the evening. Crash sometimes late by about 1. So I'm hoping to change that. But that is a day in my life. But like I said, it's not always consistent.
Right. I wanted to talk a little bit more about this familial side of yours because your wife is a casting director. So, how does the dynamic play at home?
Well, sir, it's I don't get much work from Nandini Shrikant's casting agency. I get a lot of work to do at home. That is good, but when we watch non-stop commentary, if I have a project and I need some sort of advice, or I need to bounce it off of her, then I make sure she can read the script. So that's how we have our jugalbandi.
You started off with radio and being an RJ at Radio Mirchi. So, take us through that journey.
Yes, sure, but that was fantastic. I would love to still be an RJ. I was 19 years old, and Radio Mirchi had just opened up.
Right.
They were like 6 months old, and at that time it was similar to an MTV format where the VJs were talking in English, but you could play a mix of English and Hindi music and remixes. This is 2002. I had gone because Radio Mirchi needed a few people, like 2 college representatives from each college. So I was in National College doing my mass media, and I went there. And once I was there, I noticed in another sort of a studio door, there were some auditions going on. So Saloni Mehta, who was working there at the time and a friend of ours, I said, listen, I'd like to audition. And she said, yeah, sure. So then I sort of stayed back. I had a couple of college friends with me who also stayed back with me. And I wrote out a script, and I also did this sort of a mock interview thing where I'm talking to a person and I change my voice and stuff. And yeah, dono mein se, I think Wayne, the sound engineer, he heard both my auditions and he deleted the bad one. He only kept the good one. And 4 days later, I got a call when I was at National College. And I thought it was a prank because a lot of people would make prank calls at that time. So I was like, yeah, Times of India, yeah, sure, who is this? So Prasad from HR gave me a call and he said, and I was 19, so he said, I'm calling from the Times of India with regards to your Radio Mirchi audition, and we'd like to meet you to take it forward. So I started getting a lot of like professional jargon. How do we take this forward, sort of a thing. So, but I was with them for 6 months. I finished my college, my class at about 2 o'clock. I'd take a bus to Lower Parel, from Bandra to Lower Parel. Sometimes sleep in the bus for those 20 minutes. And then I had a Nokia phone, so I'd set the alarm, put it in my pocket so that I don't miss the stop. And then I was at the radio station for 6 hours. I'd basically come back home about 10 o'clock. From 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock, I would do all my college work and start the process again. And that was the most, like the busiest I've ever worked in my life, dude, the most productive. Post that, I've just been like a huge kamchor and not worked that hard.
A lot of actors started off with radio. So is there a correlation between acting and radio work?
I would imagine because, if you rewind before cinema even started in the world, stage was obviously the foundation of performance.
Right.
And radio, once radio had caught on in the world and in the country, then there were a lot of radio plays also being made.
Yeah.
So, and then you could, graduate, into camera once it was available. So I think these are different stages of performance.
Right.
It just helps, I guess.
Right. You are a theatre actor, and I wanted to ask you now that a lot of people have this patronizing gaze towards theatre. They think that theatre is the means and being on screen is the end. So, what are your thoughts about that?
Good question. For me, theatre is my passion, and camera work is my profession and my trade. Yeah, so I think you need to keep them simultaneously going. That would be what I've learned. I think it's impossible to work every day of the year, no matter how busy an actor, a film actor, or a camera actor you are. Right. So at the most, you're probably going to work 50% of the year, at the most. So that's like 150 days.
Yeah.
And you can most definitely do about 50 to 75 days doing stage. But that's me. I have friends who do not enjoy being on stage. They're fantastic camera and cinema performers, but they don't get their kicks on stage. I get my kicks on stage.
I remember in one of the interviews you said that theatre requires a lot more rehearsals than films. So I wanted you to talk a little bit about that.
As you know, I will say it for perhaps someone who's not completely aware of it. We do about 30 to 40 days of rehearsals. Right. For a play, right? For a new play. And there are two versions. Either you have a fixed script and you put up the play, or like how you had seen Hamlet in Surat, that was a devised piece where you got to read the scene and then you go and improvise, and then you come back, read the scene and improvise. So you're working 6 hours a day every day for 30 days. That's the prep that goes into a 2-hour show. Whereas a 2-hour film would not require that amount of repetition of the same scene. So you need to sort of work in sort of like a jigsaw puzzle, and jo scenes hai, then you sort of like hit that, commit to it. Once you finish your day, you got to forget about that and then work on the next scenes that are lined up. So, but I like the practice of theatre. I really enjoy it. It's like therapy for me.
Such a lovely thing to say. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Hamlet, the Crown Prince. So when you're reinterpreting a Shakespearean tragic play as a comedy set, what are some of the greatest challenges that you face?
I mean, the challenges were like Rajat Kapoor is our director for Hamlet, the Clown Prince, and he loves the medium of clowning, as do I. So when we would read stuff, I think the challenges would be to, most of our prep work was like, okay, try and make it a comedy, try and make this tragic scene. How would you, somehow crack a joke, or how would you do something funny, think out of the box? So yeah, I think that would be one challenge, perhaps.
What was so interesting for me about that play was, so one moment you were sort of saying something very tragic, and the next moment you burst into something very random. So that absurdity and that finding humor in between the lines. So let's talk a little bit about that.
I mean, it's always in something I've learned in the theater is play against the obvious.
Yeah.
So when you read a scene and you're like, like obviously it's a sad scene, but then how do you not play it sad? Or if something's really funny, how do you not? If you play for the comedy, it's never going to be funny. The audience will never find it funny, right? So those sort of if the word is dichotomy, or just basically like an opposite version of it, that is what I really enjoy. And And especially when you're doing a play, you can sense it in the audience. Like if you're in a more compact space like Juhu's Prithvi Theatre, which is like a 200-seater, when you make people laugh, you can feel that rise, you know. And then the AC also doesn't feel cool enough because everyone's like adrenaline is pumping. And when there's something very serious, or if it's, you know, if it's done well and performed well, you can hear the pin drop silence, even though there's 200 people in the room, you know. So I like that, and I think it's always nice to be able to laugh and then bring it back, or, you know, keep it tight, keep the reins tight.
Agree. A couple of days ago, I was reading about US prison programs where a lot of prisoners had said that while if they perform Shakespeare, they find a lot of catharsis in that particular setting and that particular universe.
Wow.
So, yeah. Why do you think that Shakespearean play is a good idea to be able to vent?
I'd like to answer it with not just a sort of a leniency towards only Shakespeare, but when you are performing, you know, I mean, you in the day you experience all sorts of emotions, right? Not just happiness, but there's anxiety, trauma of some fashion, so sadness, grief, based on, you know, what your journey is. And if you can practice for a scene or something where, you know, you're 3 hours a day, or, you know, a couple of times a week, you're working on something and you have a director, and then you play out the scene. So you could not be feeling sad or angry, but because the scene demands it, you got to pump that, and you got to trick your system into actually feeling that, right? So I feel in some way, the more you sort of push those things, it's like stretching your muscles, right? If you can stretch it more, then you have more control over it. Like, you know, how Bruce Lee always talks about control. So similarly, for a performer or for a human being per se, I think everybody needs to go through a process of acting. You can be a lawyer, you don't have to make it a profession, but there is some great power to just doing the riyaz of performance. And then you leave it, then you drop it. I mean, real life is also not an act, but it is, you know, based on where you are, you will conduct yourself accordingly. That's what it is. You adapt to the space you're in.
I wanted you to talk a little bit about your greatest influences, the artists who have inspired you from literary spaces and cinematic spaces.
I have looked up to people's work. I was exposed to a lot of, more than the Hindi cinema growing up, I was exposed to more English-based movies from, you know, America and the UK, like all of us. So I remember initially really enjoying the way Tom Hanks would perform. You know, so effortless, and honestly is, you know, quite a regular looking guy, but he just seems so charismatic. And then later on, once I sort of started seeing most of the seniors in our industry, like Mr. Shah Rukh Khan or Mr. Amir Khan, Nasiruddin Shah, how they perform, you know, how did they balance out their and honestly, I mean, I'll take the opportunity to share this with you. Like, I started researching, I used to find interviews of really famous actors when they were my age. Like, now I'm 37, so I'd calculate who was born when, and I'd watch these old interviews of them, and they would be working, they'd be shooting, and then they'd be on either calls or emails trying to hustle up some other projects, or somebody would come and have another meeting. And I said, man, to grow in this industry, you really have to work hard. There's no shortcut to it. And what I would like to do is be consistent. When I look at older, you know, performers who are older than me, that gives me some sense of like, okay, if this person can perform at that age, that means by the time I get to that age, I should be able to work as well. So there's a bit of confidence that comes in.
2020 has been a tricky year, and we'll talk about it in a while. But before that, it's been like tremendously successful for you. There was Masaba, there was the Raikar Case, there was 4 more shots. So
yeah, man,
how does that feel?
It felt very good. It felt very good to be able to. I mean, for me, my purpose, and I'm alive and I'm here on this planet to do what I'm doing. So when I get to do that, I feel good. I feel really good if people watch my work, because you do need an audience. So that felt nice, and I studied the mass media when I was in college. Remember, I told you going to the radio station. Also, I was doing mass media, majoring in advertising, and we would learn about market, and if you have a product, how do you want to position it and stuff. And I realized that I want to work in all the genres, and I want to just collaborate with as many people as possible. So in this case, for 2020, they were like Raikar Case had its own rhythm of performance and that kind of canvas, and I had never played the part of a cop, so Aditya Sarpotdar, our director, really needed to sort of push me into a performance like that. Then we had a Masaba, which was like Chinky's, vision largely on how to pitch things. Sonam Nair, 4 more shots, which I thoroughly enjoy, that entire world that is made over there. So it was really awesome to show off a bit.
I also wanted to ask you, so how was 2020 for you? Because it was a tricky year, and how are you able to navigate through this space?
One day at a time. I'm not even saying one day at a time. You have to graduate into one moment at a time. Like, I knew I had this interview, right, at a certain time in the day. So then I just needed to take care of what was going to happen before that. And then I know we have a dinner post this once the sun sets. So that's it. The day is sorted. Now tomorrow will be another one that you got to do. And so it's been quite a teacher. This year has been quite a teacher for everybody. And I appreciate it. I think I wouldn't want to curse it, because honestly, dude, inspiration doesn't always come in the most beautiful package. It can come in the most disgusting feelings. So it's cool. If you're alive, that's all that matters.
We've got lots to talk about, but I'll have to keep this conversation short. So in closing, I would like to ask you, what are those 5 adjectives that describe you the best?
Okay, let me try something, and not just restricted to adjectives.
Yeah.
Because I'm not so sharp at that. But how would I describe myself, Shobit? Okay, here, quick one, huh? Yeah. The world has always existed. I was born in March 1983. And prior to that, many humans and generations lived and died, and probably, if you believe in reincarnation, wo bhi hua. And, so much happened. And when my time does come, the world will still go on. So I'm just one little dot in the entire timeline. And that dot is also at the mercy of the world that has already been created, right? So the best I can do is just stay afloat, somehow vibe with what my personal interests are and what the world has to offer, right? And make the most of that. I would try not to piss too many people off. But at the same time, I understand you cannot control everybody's sort of rhythms and behaviors, and what they choose to like and dislike. But since I am around, it is important to make the most of this game called life, and treat your friends like your family, and treat your family like your friends, and rock and roll. And don't take too many things to heart. Take it easy policy. So that's, I think, how I describe myself seeing the world right now.
Such a lovely and wholesome thing to say, genuinely. So thank you so much. I think I had such a lovely time interacting with you.
Thank you, Shobit. Thank you so much. And I wait to meet you in person.
Yes.
Once again.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and never miss an update on Film Interactions.